Exciting. So Emily, it'd be great to get started with a little bit of your personal journey into the world of veganism. Kind of what's brought you here.
Yeah. Okay. So 4 years ago, I basically was in that period between Christmas and New Year where everything's just kind of a bit boring. You don't know what's going on. And I was just on YouTube one night, ended up in a rabbit hole, and there was this video on the side, and it said something like, I bet I can make you vegan in 5 minutes. And at this time, I was literally eating chicken like every week, going for dinners and having chicken wing nights with my friends, and was very much anti-vegan, if anything. And yeah, so I clicked on this video. I thought, ha, hilarious. It was 5 minutes long, and I was just completely shocked. Obviously, I mean, I knew about animal cruelty and I knew about all these things, but I just hadn't really given it too much thought. And then yeah, it was a fast-paced video. So obviously, loads of information in 5 minutes. Got to the end, and I was like, okay, this can't be real. Like this can't actually be facts. Like my life is a lie if this is actually facts. So basically after that I ended up watching every documentary under the sun, and then by the morning I came downstairs, announced to my mum that I was vegan, and she was like, well, that's ridiculous and you can make your own food from now on. So yeah, that basically started the whole vegan journey, and after that I just went cold turkey and ended up being vegan for 4 years now.
So this was the period between Christmas and New Year.
Yeah.
So what did your mum say? So I'm sure she was like, I've got a ton of leftovers. We've got something planned for New Year's Day. Like, what are you
Pretty
talking
much,
about?
yeah. Yeah, she was not happy. But I think as well, I don't think anyone thought it would actually last.
Right.
I mean, my sister actually said, I can't remember if she said it to me or others in the family. She was like, I give this 2 weeks. But yeah, we laugh about that now because she's like, well, yeah, well done. You actually lasted 4 years.
And so it was you'd come at it purely from an animal welfare point of view at this point.
Actually, no. So that obviously was super shocking, and I completely didn't agree with any of it. But for me, it was more the environmental side when
Right.
these facts and figures came out about soy being used mostly for animal feed. I was just like, this seems so illogical. Why would there's people starving in the world and we have multiple resources, but we feed animals to then kill them and then ship them on a plane somewhere else? It just didn't make any sense to me. So it was more from that point of view. And I was kind of obviously aware of climate change and all of this stuff before, but again, I hadn't given it a lot of thought. I hadn't really let it affect any choices in my life or anything. I just lived how I lived. But as soon as I saw all of this stuff that was so related to animal agriculture, I just thought, well, I can't live like that anymore. It just felt like someone had pulled the wool off my head, and I was like, okay, I'm seeing something completely differently now, and I just have to do this.
Do you think looking back, I'm just thinking about, and you'll know far more about this than me, about social media algorithms and YouTube and going down a rabbit hole. Do you think looking back, you'd probably been looking at things to do with maybe sustainability, like ecology? Was there anything going on there?
I think I was more looking at healthy healthy meal plans and bloggers that do like what I eat in a week and stuff like that. And I
Right.
think I may have just watched a couple of vegan videos thinking like, oh, what do you even eat as a vegan? And then it probably just served it that way. But it is interesting that it came into the algorithm for me in some way. But yeah.
Yeah. And how did you figure out what to eat? I mean, you've gone down the documentary route. I
Mm,
imagine like the cowspiracies and those kind of things
yeah.
popped up,
Yeah.
from an environmental standpoint, particularly. But did you come across much content that helped you, discover what it was you were going to eat? Particularly like living at home and so on.
Yeah, so yeah, at the time I was living with my parents, and I had to just start cooking my own food because my mum refused to cook vegan, which is fair enough. Um, but I think because I then was on YouTube and discovering new people, there was loads of chefs and people making crazy things out of like things I'd never even heard of before, like jackfruit or tempeh or things like that. And well, one, I thought, well, this is probably going to taste disgusting, but I'm just going to have to deal with it. But then two, I was like, where do I even find this stuff? Like, I've never seen this stuff in a supermarket before. So tofu was probably the extent of what I'd actually seen. But that's actually, I guess, the nice thing about the fact that it's grown so much in the past few years is I can literally go to my tiny Tesco's Express in the middle of Buckinghamshire and get nutritional yeast, tofu, burgers, like literally everything I could possibly need. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Were you much of a chef beforehand then? Or
No.
was that a bit of a learning journey for you too?
Yes, and actually, this is something I say to people is one of the best things that came out of veganism for me is before I actually don't think I ate that well. I think I was so just used to eating the same sort of foods, and I'd probably only graduated uni a few years before, so I hadn't really started getting into making stuff myself. And I went out for dinner a lot with friends, and I didn't really cook that much myself, so it forced me to be really creative and start being like, okay, I really enjoy this meal that's non-vegan, so how do I make it vegan? And bringing in ingredients that I'd never used before to make them a vegan meal. But actually now, for example, like vegan cheese, initially I was like, this is going to be gross. I actually way prefer the taste of it. I know that's super controversial because most vegans don't even like it, but I've had I have had cheese on occasion, like in the 4 years where, say, I've been in Italy or something where it's been on something, I've just gone, okay, whatever. But I just don't even like the taste. It's weird how it changes for you. I can really taste the dairy, I guess. It's just doesn't feel right. Doesn't
Yeah.
taste right anymore.
What was your kind of the reaction like from your social groups? You know, you said your
Yeah,
family were a little bit taken aback,
it was
but
interesting. I think I was actually a bit nervous to tell my friends. I think maybe just because I was a bit younger and no one else I knew was vegan, so I knew it was going to be like a if you say it, you have to stick with it because otherwise people are gonna take the piss forever. So I think I told people um, maybe I did this on purpose, like making a big thing of it, being like, by the way, I'm vegan now. Everyone should be vegan. Just because I knew if I didn't, then I probably wouldn't stick to it myself. I
right.
didn't myself initially. But the good thing was for me when I changed or transitioned between eating meat and everything to not, I actually joined a new job at the same time. So it was quite nice having a fresh group of people to
Okay.
be like, oh, I'm vegan, and it just not being sort of a thing. Whereas I think if I'd gone to my old work and be like, I'm vegan now, people would be like, oh, all right then.
We'll see
Let's see
you
how
at
it goes.
Nando's on Thursday. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll have given it up by then. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah. So I can imagine like a new group definitely kind of has helped. And you know, you mentioned
Yeah.
in that 4 years, you know, things changing, you know, fairly
Mm.
significantly. You know, the sorts of changes you've seen. You know, have you seen them? Have you, you know, and your from your viewpoint, do you view them largely as positive? You know, the rise in convenience foods and so on and so forth. I know there's some split opinions within the sort of community about, you know, the
Yeah.
rise of junk food, etc. You know, what's your
Yeah.
perspective?
I mean, I get it, but I think if the overall aim is for more people to be plant-based for whatever reason, environmental health, whatever, I think the more accessible it is better in general because I think that was initially not a gripe, but kind of I could understand why it was almost a privilege to be vegan, and
Mm.
especially like for example, even with me saying I couldn't find barely anything vegan where I lived, and I live in a fairly affluent area, so for anyone that isn't, it's probably a lot harder to find. And even when I first lived in London and my local shops were just corner shops, you know, it was super difficult to find things that actually be able to make a vegan meal from. So I think overall it is really good, even if it's junk food, because you just treat it like how you treat junk food as
Yeah.
if you eat non-vegan. You know, it's like a treat. So I don't have Beyond Meat burgers every day, but maybe once a week or something. It's still, in my opinion, healthier than eating meat because I don't think meat's healthy. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm with you. You mentioned like when you first got in that initial route before you kind of found the environmental statistics and so on and the animal welfare bits, but your initial kind of seed of inspiration perhaps for searching down those rabbit holes on YouTube was health-based videos. Was there an element for you of having to, you know, relearn nutritionally speaking, and did you take some convincing of yourself that it was kind of healthy, having taken the ethical standpoint?
Yeah, I think so, because there's that typical kind of joke around, oh, but where do you get your protein from and everything? And I think I definitely felt that way initially. I was like, well, am I going to be malnourished? Am I not going to actually have all the food groups I need? And I quickly learned, because I mean, I never did this before I was vegan. I would not check nutritional values. I'd maybe check calories if I was just checking calories, but I would never check what was actually in something really. So that probably was better, that I learned so much more about foods that was beneficial for just life in general. Like, I didn't realize that seeds and nuts and all of that stuff I now have for breakfast basically is so dense in protein that I probably have more protein now than I would before.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it is absolutely, you know, to your point, it's definitely a learning curve with some fantastic benefits. You end up eating far more diverse, I think, generally speaking. Yeah.
Definitely. I feel like I probably had 6 meals on rotation before, like pasta, pizza. I probably did not eat that well. And now, I mean, I literally had like the same thing to eat every day, like avocado and eggs on toast, and then just something a bit crappy for dinner. But now I just really enjoy finding new things. It's almost like a bit of a challenge as well, being like, I know I can make this even more delicious being vegan, and finding, because obviously I follow loads of stuff on Instagram as well. If I see something, I'll save it and be like, okay, I'm going to make that tonight. And I actually just try a lot more with new foods and just like so many more flavors, I think, than before. I think I'm, definitely more varied.
What were the kind of go-tos for you? The kind of perhaps the recipe developers and chefs and so on. Who were the ones that you sort of turned to and perhaps still do now?
Rachel Armour on Instagram. Actually, I found her on YouTube first. She has amazing meals. I think his name's Avant Garde Vegan.
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gaz Oakley.
Yeah, Gaz Oakley.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but then in terms of really useful accounts, I think Little London Vegan, because I was living in London, like to discover all new places. She was great because she's just a hugely useful resource. Who else is that? I'm trying to remember people now, but I can't.
Was it? I mean, you know, in that time, that period of time you were living in London, have you seen, or did you see a huge rise in kind of vegan restaurants, cafes, options,
Definitely.
even? You know.
Yeah, I think around the time I became vegan, it was kind of like the hipster joke, like, oh, she's vegan now, but then it kind of became a bit more mainstream, I guess. And yeah, I was seeing new things open all the time. I remember one day in my office in, I think it was Oldgate East at the time, there was literally a queue from like one side of the road all the way up the other side of the road for this new vegan pizza place. And I was like, what is this about? And then 6 months later, that was me. So I think it definitely changed a lot. And it's quite fun as well when you are kind of learning new flavors and trying to get more into it and find out things that you like, going to new places. I think that's always part of the fun as well, especially when it's like delicious foods like burgers and pizzas and all that kind of stuff. It's just nice to find those places you can go with friends.
Did you have a go-to kind of vegan restaurant in London?
Well, I think a really good middle ground one to go with people that aren't vegan is Mildred's, obviously, because it's vegetarian and it's just delicious in every way. But I think for me, I always loved like just little cafes and stuff like that. I love breakfast foods, so like any place that does bowls, like acai bowls and stuff like that, I love. And like scrambled tofu, that's my fave. So anywhere that does that kind of stuff, I'll be there.
I can't get scrambled tofu right. You know,
Really?
yeah.
this is the dish I've mastered because
Have you? What do
I
I need to
honestly
do? Tell me.
have it probably every other day.
Wow.
But I think the key to it is nutritional yeast. I just put loads in it.
Nutritional yeast. I haven't put that in.
Yeah. So basically, I had it was called cheesy pesto tofu scramble. I had it in this place in Brighton, and ever since then, I just make it all the time, but to my own cheesiness level, so quite high. So it's really simple. It's literally just like mashed tofu, a bit of oat milk or something, and nutritional yeast. Really, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Isn't pink salt the key? I thought pink salt was supposed to be
well, I
the
think
key.
if you want to make it eggy, yeah,
Right. Oh, okay.
or what's it called? Color namak or something.
Right.
I've had that in it before, and that actually, yeah, it makes it more eggy. But I think I prefer it like cheesy with the nutritional
I
yeast.
see.
Yeah,
I see. So is this more like this more like sounds more brunchy to me than breakfasty?
yeah, yeah. To be fair, it's probably more brunchy.
Well, yeah, but you might have cheese for breakfast. I don't know. For me, it strays. Once you get cheese involved, then you're talking brunch. Personally,
Yeah, true. It's a bit, yeah. It's a later in the day meal.
Well,
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm glad we're sort of establishing what time
What time is appropriate for
for
cheese? Yeah.
cheese and how it evolves breakfast into brunch. I think that's one of the big topics in the vegan community right now. so, so, so moving forward, 4 years in now, and obviously we've just been through veganuary and so on. Have you had a lot of friends, family who kind of over the years they thought it was going to be a whim? That are you now the sort of the vegan guru for them? Are you their go-to?
I think for some people, yes. But I think I'm actually like less vocal about it now. I think initially I was so, I don't know, up in arms in a way. So I was like, I
Right.
can't believe this is how I was living my life, and I can't believe this is how you live your life. And I was a bit like that. Whereas now I'm just like, this is what I do. I don't expect anyone to do what I'm doing, but I'm more than happy to guide people if they want. And I've had loads of people turn vegan since 4 years ago. So yeah, loads of friends, and for whatever reasons, or even just people cutting down or flexitarian a bit. And because I'm at home with my parents at the moment, like my parents are trying to cut down on meat and stuff, and they only have red meat like once a week and stuff like that. And I think any sort of small improvement or just cutting down is always beneficial. Um, yeah, because I just think in general, if you're pushing an agenda on people, they'll back away straight away, and that's what I've learned as well. Like if you try and push your views on anything in life on someone, they'll just reject it instantly. So it's better to just have your point of view and talk about it positively and not push it down people's throats, and then they're more likely to come to you and ask for advice or be more interested in what actually made you choose this lifestyle or something.
Has that been a bit of a slow realization for you, or was there a particular flashpoint where you thought that's not an effective way to communicate? I need to kind of stop and rethink.
I think maybe like 2 years ago, it just seemed I was meeting more people that, I mean, it was maybe just a joke amongst friends of friends or something, where I would almost be introduced as like the token vegan or something
Mm.
like that. And I knew straight away I'd just be questioned. So I think I was a bit maybe on the back foot straight away, because I felt like someone would always be like, oh, what about that leather jacket you're wearing or whatever.
Mm. Mm.
So I felt a bit more on the defense then. So maybe I'd be more trying to get my point across, I guess. So now I just kind of, if I'm aware, because you can kind of tell when someone wants to get into a debate, and honestly, I just can't be bothered sometimes, or most of the time in a social setting, I can't be bothered to talk about my lifestyle choices like that. I just want to have a nice time with people. So if there's people, like older family relatives or people I've met in that kind of thing who mostly have issues with it, I just sort of laugh about it or just brush it off most of the time, because these are the kind of people I know probably need more education, but a lot of the time I just don't want to be that person to try, because I know they're just they're closed off,
Mm.
they're already
Mm.
closed off to it, because they're coming at you with your lifestyle choice and trying to make it like it's a problem for them, even though you haven't
Right.
asked them why they're not. You haven't tried to push it on them in any way. They just want to know why it is that you don't eat bacon, or something. So yeah.
Do you have you found some of those folks? Cause I'm just talking from personal experience here. I tend to find those folks when I don't, get into a debate, tend to be the ones who want to actually come back and have a proper conversation at some point. It's almost like they want to debate because there's something going on internally that they're trying to question.
Yeah.
Have you had that kind of experience? Or was that just me?
I think there's two types of people. Maybe there's more that type that's actually secretly quite interested, and want to know a bit more about it, maybe. But I think there is obviously just some people that just like to have an argument,
Yeah.
and some people that just think your life is so wild. Like, I always find the expression militant vegans just so amusing, because it's just like, obviously veganism is about compassion, so it's just I find it actually amusing when people say stuff like that, because it's like so far from the truth. But the fact that you've managed to anger someone so much by not choosing to harm animals or use animals in any way, I find just it's actually quite funny.
It is a strange viewpoint, isn't it? To be angry
Yeah,
with somebody for trying to not harm things.
exactly. It's so strange, especially if you're not calling people a murderer. Like, I know obviously back in the day there was all those protests and stuff, and people would throw like fake blood at people and call them murderers for wearing fur coats and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm not going about my day like that. I don't
Yeah.
need to be called a militant vegan, but
Yeah. So fast forward into the business. It'd be good to sort of start to think about that, because there's obviously some crossovers, in terms of
yeah,
your the kind of businesses that you're supporting and so on. But for folks who don't know, it'd be good to sort of understand a little bit about, firstly, the journey into the business, and then I suppose,
yeah,
and also what it is, and how
yeah.
and who it is that you're out there helping.
Okay, cool. So I was working for a big corporate beauty brand before, and absolutely no shade to them. I loved doing that job. I loved the company and everything. Um, but as I'd kind of been on this journey in the past 2 years, I guess, when I was there, I had then become aware of certain ingredients used in the products, and certain products that I couldn't use, that I knew I was kind of marketing to sell. And it was also the sustainability point, that I knew how much plastic waste was happening. I knew how much emissions was made from all of these products, that they're not completely essential. Um, so in the back of my head, this was kind of bubbling under the surface for a while, I think, and I wanted to maybe switch into a vegan beauty brand or something like that. But I think actually, realistically, I wanted to do something more than that. So I kind of I knew in the back of my head I wanted to do this, but I also just kind of wanted a bit of a break from London and that whole go 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 lifestyle. I just wanted to have a bit of a break, have some space, and just really think about what it was that I wanted to do in the next steps. And I knew the space from it, and having a bit of travel time, and that whole soul searching piece would be really good. So I left that company December last year, and then went traveling for about 2.5 months in January, and obviously didn't totally work out because coronavirus hit. So I had to come home in at the end of March, but I had a bit of time, and obviously the instinct was there, the intuition was there. I knew something. I knew I'd get something from just having that space. And when I had some space, I took my laptop, and every time I kind of had these ideas, I'd write them down, and then started thinking, okay, well, maybe I can just sort of apply what I've been doing before, so social media and content and creation and strategy and all this stuff, and maybe I can apply that to brands that I think really need that sort of help in being seen online. Um, so I was like, oh, okay, and the spark had kind of been born, and then started thinking about names, and obviously I wanted it to be, wholesome kind of feel, or like something that kind of implied growth and all of that. So then Nurture Studios was born. So basically, Nurture Studios is a creative content and social media agency which specializes in vegan and sustainable brands. So that was, well, I guess the inception of it was about April, May last year. And I had obviously like zero clients, but I had the passion was there, and I just started reaching out to people that I wanted to work with, and it kind of snowballed from that really. So I reached out to a oat milk company that I personally used that I really liked, and yeah, so having conversations with them, and I've been working with them ever since. And then I've worked with a couple beauty brands and sustainability e-commerce sites and stuff like that. So for now, it's going really well, and I'm really excited about where it's going to go in the next year. I've got an intern working for me now, and yeah, I'm just excited, really.
It's an incredibly brave move, I may say. Like, it mid lockdown,
Yeah.
deciding to set up a business. I imagine there was, your initial thoughts were probably filled with trepidation around that.
Well, that's interesting you asked. So I obviously, when I came back from traveling, everything was just so unsure in every single aspect. It was like I'd been away from kind of the real world here for a few months, so I was in very much a chilled travel space. I didn't want to work, if I'm honest. Um, and everyone was sort of saying, well, you're just gonna have to get a job, just get any job, like doesn't matter what it is. And I was calling recruiters and like looking on LinkedIn every day for like a month and just seeing nothing new come up in terms of jobs. So I would have applied to something similar to what I was doing before, and then I started getting a couple of interviews maybe mid-April or something, and I went to the last stages of the interviews, but I just knew in my gut I didn't want to do them. Like, there's just a huge reservation around it. I didn't get a good vibe from the companies. I wasn't enthused about what they were selling. Like, one of them, for example, was a supplement brand that essentially was trying to say that they could cure everything, and I was just like, I can't do that. Like, I physically cannot pretend to say that that is fact, like, when it's not. But interestingly, and I'm so happy this happened, I got to the last stages of the interviews, and I thought, I should be lucky that I'm even getting interviews and have like an opportunity to have work at this time where a lot of people don't. And then I got the feedback back from the company, and they said something like, she seems too nice, so I don't think she'll fit with the culture.
Wow.
But I think it's funny because, on reflection, one, being nice isn't bad, and two, if your company culture isn't that well inclined, I'm really glad I'm not working for you.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so then it was kind of like, I literally remember being sat here at this desk, having that phone call and going, okay, that's it. I'm doing, this is a sign. If I ever had a sign, is this, like, just go for it. And then I just started every day just trying to hustle on what I wanted to do. And funnily enough, I just had so much more energy to do it. Even though it was the middle of lockdown, everything was just mental, no one knew what was going on. I felt really enthused about what I was doing, and I was excited every day to start like working the website and making a logo and all that stuff.
So, I mean, talk me through a little bit, without giving away all the trade secrets, I guess, but talk me through a little bit of the process, because, as you probably can see from my social media presence, podcasting, hopefully I'm okay at, but the social media side and the branding is pretty self-taught and and fairly rough around the edges. So, what's the sort of thing that you guys, as there's two of you now, we can say, what's the sort of thing that you folks kind of offer to businesses?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I wouldn't say it's like a blanket approach to anyone. It's very much based on what that individual business needs and, budget constraints and stuff like that. But because I'm working generally with kind of smaller or startup brands, it's kind of just being really focused on the area that I think will actually help boost their visibility. And a lot of the time it's like just picking one channel and just doing it really well, like Instagram, or focusing more on ads or stuff like that, or just getting their brand in place where it looks visually appealing and something that people want to buy into. So obviously content wise, I do sort of shoots and things like that, as well as just basic kind of content creation and graphics and stuff like that. Obviously social strategy and just kind of looking at what is the key kind of selling point that they have that I think people need to hear more about and that they will love. Obviously the whole management of kind of the community and the social in general. So like talking to people and all of that stuff, and creating a bit more of, because there's obviously so many brands out there where, you know, it's a brand, but people really love to be engaged with them. So, you know, especially around things like veganism and sustainability, that it's nice that there's naturally kind of like an audience there for it now, and it's just it's growing more and more. And I think that's a really exciting place to be at the moment, especially in what I'm doing, because it really helps the clients that I have, because people are interested, people are engaged in the stuff now, so it's just going to get bigger and bigger, which is amazing.
Do you know to what extent is the kind of social media presence the voice of the business, particularly in it, given the fact that, as you said, there's tons of vegan businesses out there now? I wouldn't say, you know, there's loads of opportunity still, but it's still quite a crowded space in certain areas. There are lots of brands competing for a small population of people, which is growing, admittedly, but still is small. So how important, you know, versus say the product versus the place of business, the voice that they're giving to the customer, sort of, you know, on the phone and so on. How important do you see that social media presence for that business?
Well, yeah, I guess it is becoming more crowded now and all of that. So it is harder to be seen, but I think that's something that's kind of been happening for a long time. It's like with any aspect, or like, you know, when people try and become an influencer or something, it's like, oh, well, you can't be a YouTuber anymore because it's so crowded. But then people do, you know, people in this past lockdown, I've seen loads of people just become like a YouTuber or something like that. So I think there is always space for people. It's about, well, whether you really want to, whether you think that it is that valuable for you. But I think the thing for social media is that, one, it's free. So in terms of marketing your product or whatever, that is perfect for you to be able to visually as well kind of show your shop front in a way, and show what your values are and how people can be more engaged with you. And I think that's a nice bridge between kind of like your product or your service and the people that are buying it, because you have kind of real time, I guess, insights in a way into what people are actually talking about. And if you do an ad or even any sort of post and you have, you know, negative feedback, that's instant, like to the moment cultural like influence, I guess, that you can then go, okay, we might be missing the mark in some way, or maybe things are shifting in this direction. So yeah, but I think it is obviously important for people to have their voice, I guess, in a way. And I know it's difficult, especially with if you don't have the what's the word? You don't have the resource to create content and stuff and all of that. But the thing is, if you are, you know, just a one-woman band or something selling vegan candles or something, you can always tell your story, or you can get people interested in you in some way, whether it's you as a person or, you know, how you started creating your product or your journey, just as, you know, there's any number of things that you can go down to get people interested.
Is the kind of like, you know, mastering how these algorithms work, is that is that an ever-changing thing? I mean, I mean, I really don't understand how these things work, you know, myself. So I'm imagining, does it kind of evolve all the time, you know, with the policies of the different social media platforms, and maybe the, you know, how they choose to prioritize, say, a reel on Instagram versus a like, or what, you know, how does that kind of stuff work? How do you keep up with that?
It's difficult, I must admit, because you're kind of doing what you think you're, you know, like Reels came about in, I think, August or something, and I was suddenly saying to my clients, we need to start jumping on this, and like this is like the fastest growing channel on Instagram and stuff, and we've got to jump on it. And then, you know, now it's, I guess, 6 months after or something, everyone's noticing again engagement's dropping and stuff like that. It is literally like this ever evolving game in a way, and I know it is annoying, especially for influencers and people that they've changed their business to accommodate for these new algorithm changes, and then they have to change it all again. So in some ways it's obviously it's also good that you always have opportunity to be seen more or kind of start in a way, because new things are coming out that you can jump on and make it your own. Like there's so many people I've discovered via Reels, for example, which is obviously just a knockoff of TikTok, but I would never have seen them before, probably ever, if that didn't come out. So yeah, but for me personally, I just try and stay up to date with it via, you know, research and going on YouTube and kind of seeing what other people are seeing, and it's all about kind of the trends, because I guess knowing from where I used to work, where I'd have kind of direct relationships with Facebook and Instagram and stuff, even then at that level of partnership with the actual people at the channel, there's only so much they can tell you. They will never give you the game. They'll never tell you this is how you'll win. They'll give you bits of information on, you know, content is king and this is how you make better content, stuff like that, but it's never like this is the secret. So you have to kind of work it out, I guess, yourself, and what formula works for you, and just try and stay up to date with it and have fun with it, I guess, is the main thing. Like, try not to take it too serious, because I think if you do, you'll just get yourself wound up by numbers and followers and what's working, what's not working. So yeah,
I suppose that connects to a point that you made a little bit earlier, where you and it was interesting to me, you know, saying you kind of said it's almost like a trial and error process. There's almost put something out, let's learn from it, and adapt. Is that quite common? Is that kind of, you have to have that kind of resilience, that understanding that some things won't land, and you have to figure it out as you go?
Definitely. And I think as well, it's just testing and learning all the time, because there's so many variables. You know, you could have a management system and analytics system that tells you most of your followers are online at 6 p.m, let's say, and then you post something expecting more engagement and you don't get the same, and you go, oh no, why is that? Like, was it the content, or was this? And it could just be that day people weren't, and the system told you that they were, but they might not be. You know, it's not black and white. So I think, you can't. I guess it's good to obviously analyze, see what's working, what's not, but at the same time, there's always so many variables to it. You know, there's no literal black and white answers to what is going to work or what's going to land with people. But I guess trying is obviously half of it, and trying to, you know, look at competitors and what other people are doing and take inspiration from other people and see what you can create and what feels good, what's fun, and try and just be more educational or inspiring or something.
Has the current situation that we find ourselves in leveled the playing field somewhat? You know, you mentioned your experience working for big businesses before, where you had access to the analytics, the social media platforms. You know, I imagine there's sort of, you know, the account executives for each of those, you know, Instagrams and Facebooks and so on. And you know, obviously the pandemic hit. Suddenly, everybody's not commuting anymore. There's whole new patterns of behaviour. I imagine what people do online is completely different to how it was before, because it was often built around these hour-and-a-half long commutes each way that people were doing into central London or wherever they worked. Those are now gone. So as a new business starting up, would you say that there's been an effect of levelling the playing field insofar as you're all trying to learn the game together?
A little bit, I think. A little bit. I mean, I think the main thing, I guess, that all of these platforms will hold the control over is the fact that they've changed it so much in the past few years that that organic reach will only get you so far, and it's kind of, yeah, push people to have to pay for ads.
Right.
So that's something maybe 6 years ago you didn't necessarily have to do, whereas now I think I would always suggest to a brand to just be doing a bit of it, because obviously that's just the way they've changed their platform. Like,
Yeah.
it's about the money now. So
Yeah.
if you play their game, you have to play it. So if you aren't, like, for example, things that I've noticed with some of my clients, if we aren't running ads, but we usually do, you'll see a massive drop. So I think if you're just doing a few here and there, it will keep things kind of bubbling away, even if you're not spending loads of money. But in terms of leveling the playing field, yeah, I guess because it means that everyone is discovering newness at the same time. So the reels, for example, is, that was a level playing field. It was just who's going to start being brave enough to use it first, really. And then you start seeing there's certain people you see all the time, because obviously they've started to have fun with it and actually create content around it. So yeah, you'll see more of that, I guess.
Is the frustration for businesses, I guess, that some of this stuff takes huge amounts of time, effort, energy, creativity, and yet you can get it wrong, and it doesn't reach anyone.
I think, yeah, that's true. But what I would always kind of caveat with people is that whatever you spend on social, creating content or ads wise or whatever, or hiring a social media person, is always going to be significantly less than traditional media. So TV spots or cinema spots or any of this media that people used to do would cost literally such a bomb, and now it's kind of made it more accessible to complete startups. Someone making a business from their bedroom can now do that because social media is available to everyone, and even if they were to do some ads, then it's going to cost them way less than even a physical space, on a tube station or something like that. So I think that is quite nice about it, because it means that everyone has access in a way.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly true to an extent, isn't it? There's a sort of democratization of advertising in a way that anybody can, in the same way that anyone now can become a YouTuber or a podcaster. They can almost run their own media business themselves from their bedroom. They can also advertise it, I guess, too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that is nice, because even I noticed working for a big corporation that whenever budgets were cut or something would happen from the top down, everything would actually end up falling on the social team, which I've noticed in other companies. It goes scrap the out of home campaign, scrap this, scrap that, just shove all the money into social, because the other thing is people can actually see the results from it day by day, and you can chop and change things as you see they're not working, and it's just a lot more efficient. I think your budget will go so much further, and you can actually see what kind of content is working with people, what audiences are coming to you now, and it's actually quite interesting that you can see more insights, I guess, into your audience, or what's working for your brand, than you would technically from a bus ad or something like that.
Yeah, and I imagine, again, about your wisdom, I imagine it takes ages to plan a campaign that's going to end up on the advert break on Coronation Street versus social media, where you can try 15 different things in a week and see what sticks.
Yeah, exactly. You can be a lot more reactive and stuff as well. Like, for example, with the inauguration a few weeks ago now, then the Bernie meme going around, and there's stuff like that I obviously really enjoy just as a consumer of media on the internet.
Yeah.
But then you can apply it to your clients as well if it works, and stuff like that just comes out, that I think is obviously hilarious. You can start to have a bit more fun with stuff like that. Then obviously you won't be able to do something that culturally relevant if you had a TV spot. So
yeah. Is one of the big challenges, particularly, I suppose for any business, but particularly for, vegan businesses, ethically run businesses where there's a viewpoint on, a higher sense of purpose, is there probably more weight on their voice being the right tone from a point of view with the with the community, with the vegan community? I'm thinking, there's division over some people will have a very intersectional view of all oppressions being linked, and other vegans will absolutely it's animals first and so on. Is that really choppy water for businesses to navigate, that just their own community?
It definitely is. I think it definitely is, because you could put something out and it can resonate with 99% of people, and then one person can put a comment on it, disagreeing or whatever, and that brand will then question everything and go, oh, maybe we're talking a bit too much about the environmental side or something. Let's try and be a bit softer in our messaging or something like that. So I think, you're definitely open to a lot more criticism or feedback in a way if you're just out there selling whatever to do with veganism or something. And I think especially around just even the word vegan just can irk a lot of people in some way. So I've noticed even brands saying, okay, let's move away from saying it's vegan and start just saying plant-based or suitable for vegans and stuff like that, rather than that being the core message that they're going out there with, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I imagine, again, another reason why getting some help in this space is probably quite important, because I'm just thinking, if your line of work is, I don't know, making oat milk, and that's what you're amazing at, you're not necessarily amazing at this,
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I quite like about what I do, obviously, is being able to have the enthusiasm and excitement for all of these brands that I personally use and love, and then being able to be like, I can see why people will like this. Let me talk about that in this way online, and then seeing what happens. So that's what's exciting for me.
Do you see some businesses being a little bit reluctant to spend money on social media initially? I'm thinking from the viewpoint that, like we said, there's a democratization. They've probably got their own Instagram account and so on. So they kind of think, well, I don't really need to pay somebody to do it. I can do this. But I suppose the more we're talking about it, the realization that I'm coming to is I could probably do my own tax return, but but it's an accountant is probably going to do it a lot better than me.
No, that's definitely true. I think I, even now in my business, which is about social, I've also got to a point where I'm like, well, I need to run my own channels to promote my business, but I don't have the time to do that when I'm working with clients. So, I'm like, okay, I need an intern, or I need help now. So I think, it's definitely one more than what people think is involved, because I think for many years when I started working social, it was kind of almost taking the piss out of, in a way, because people would be like, oh, she just tweets for a living. But now obviously people see it for a lot more than it is. It's brand strategy, it's campaigns, it's content creation, it's so much more. And as the platforms have evolved, it's like, how many platforms are there now? There's like at least 10 that I can think of. And then within Instagram alone, there's like 5 different channels within that, like stories, TV feed, everything. So if you want to be seen, if you want your brand to be successful, you have to actually play in these things. I think it's just as simple as that, really. I mean, unless you're one of those huge PR overnight successes and you don't even have to post anything, then props to you. Because I think that's rare, for one. But
Does your tone have to change quite significantly depending on what channel you're communicating on? So I just think, personally, when I'm on Twitter, and it might just be the people I've chosen to follow and who follow me on there, versus Instagram, it feels like a very different audience almost.
I think, within the same brand, you can have a different audience across any platform. One of my brands on Instagram is obviously largely probably 25 to 35, but then Facebook is 45 to 65, and it's like completely different. So that's the kind of thing you have to look at and be like, well, a meme is not going to resonate with your audience on Facebook, is it? So let's think about that a little bit. So tone is definitely important. Yeah.
It's sometimes difficult to tie them all up. So I'm just thinking, you can be quite, I suppose, like on Twitter, and again, it's a completely naive experience for me, but on Twitter, I feel there's probably a lot more political discussion, perhaps more vocal disagreement as well, between groups. And Instagram probably feels, particularly I'm thinking in the world of veganism, probably feels a little bit more shiny, happy, younger, mainstream. Yeah, lots of food, not so much, not so political. And when you post something a bit political, it tends to fall a little bit more flat on Instagram than Twitter. How difficult is it for a business to tie those up? You mentioned earlier that that you'd almost advise sometimes pick one, do it well.
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean, for one, I think Twitter is like a good example of a platform that's kind of changed a lot over the years and has become a place, I think, less for brands now. I think it is literally that news. Like if like something happened, like years ago in London, if something happened or I heard a noise, I'd be like, what's going on here? And I go on Twitter straight away to find out what's going on because I know the news will come there first. It's not where I'm going to consume brand content or anything that inspires me. So I guess, I would definitely question the use of a lot of platforms for a brand just because they're not applicable to a lot of them. So I know a couple of years ago, there's a lot of question marks around TikTok, for example, and the brand I was working for was like, well, this has come out, like, should we be on it? And I was kind of saying, I don't think we need to be on it yet because our core audience is 45 plus, like, so they're not there. There's no point.
Yeah.
No point. But obviously, if your brand is, I don't know, a young vegan brand that people are going to get value from seeing how-to content on TikTok, yeah, definitely, like, go for it. But you have to, I think, treat each one how you would consume it as well. So if you're going on Instagram to be inspired or educated, then obviously try and create content that fits these things. And if you're going on TikTok to have a laugh, then probably create content that does that too, So I think thinking about them and how people want to use them is also a good idea.
Do you see that social media has kind of evolved, or is your experience that it kind of, if you like, amplifies negativity? Is there an element of that with it, that almost negative messages get more attention than positive messages? And how do you navigate that as a brand?
I think I've definitely noticed that when negative comments do appear, I think that they hold so much weight. So someone could have 10 I love it comments, but the one comment that says, like, this is terrible, why am I seeing this, holds so much more weight for the brand, or even within that space of people that may have come to that post and they see that one comment, they go, oh, why is it that they don't like it? Rather than seeing the positive ones and being like, oh, well, everyone loves it. A lot of people will focus on the bad, I think. But I think it's definitely interesting because in some ways you kind of just have to just carry on how you would normally. Like if you are consuming things or you post something and you don't have necessarily the reception that you want, you just can't let yourself be totally affected by it. Like, it obviously doesn't define your worth. It obviously doesn't mean that your brand is terrible if less people like this post. I think that definitely is like more awareness around that not being the validation is definitely key.
I think it's probably good advice for everybody, just not just for businesses
as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's sort of a skill that everyone's kind of, who's growing up now, has to learn, right? Is that it's almost not to hold their self-worth in the likes and comments.
Definitely. I think even like on a personal level, I've had to move through that too, like especially when you follow things that aspire you and not inspire you, but you aspire to be, or something like that. And you try and put yourself out there or something. Things don't resonate sometimes, and then you I think it's just a part of human nature. Sometimes you can't help but be affected by it and feel like everyone hates you, when in reality it's not that. And you shouldn't even let that be the reason why you're posting something. It should just be you're posting something because you like it, and you don't care if other people aren't going to, because you actually like it. So that's how I try and approach things now, just on a personal level, because you could go absolutely nuts if you validate yourself via likes and followers.
Again, fantastic advice. Just thinking of vegan businesses specifically, and I'm thinking, we talked earlier when you were talking about your personal journey into it, and friends and family, and those people who sort of almost enjoy criticizing you for being vegan when you've not necessarily said anything about it. Yeah. Do you find that's something that vegan businesses have to kind of almost just develop a resilience to, that they will get, especially if they've got a paid promotion that is targeting a whole bunch of people, that somebody will come at them and say, I hate vegans and everything they stand for?
Always. Yeah, I think you have to know, especially if you're putting the label, the big V on it, people, there's going to be people, just because that's what they enjoy doing as a keyboard warrior, they enjoy doing that stuff, and you just have to ignore them. Because I've seen it in the past with ads or things that I've run, where a brand will want to pull something because they've had one negative comment, literally one, and you think, well, actually, I'm looking at these numbers and I can see it's reached way more people than this other ad, for example, and there's been loads more clicks or something like that, and you think it's actually working. But just because one negative comment was placed under it, people think it's not, or they just assume. In a way, it's kind of like that whole thing of there's no bad press. In a way, it's like, if you're annoying people that much just simply by having a vegan product, then do you know what, whatever, because it's probably working and more people are seeing it.
Well, I guess this advice might be bespoke to the business and the tone of voice they're trying to create. But would your general advice to businesses be not to engage back? Because I imagine, as passionate vegans, who believe in what we believe, plus passionate about their business that they're creating and what it stands for, to have that kind of criticism, there's probably something innate in you that wants to fight back.
Definitely.
Is your experience not to?
I've had it loads of times, even when I wasn't working vegan side, just even working beauty side, and we used real women, like real customers in our campaigns, and it was a really beautiful campaign, real skin, all that stuff. And there was horrible comments, nasty comments, and as a brand I felt like we should, in a way, say, this is a positive space. These are real people. They're not models. They were not paid for this. And because you feel protective of especially people. But yeah, so vegan side, you can obviously feel the same, because you think you're right. You want everyone else to think the way that you think. So you want to come back and say, well, what about what you're doing or whatever? But I would be very hesitant unless it was very carefully worded and more vague, perhaps, than just engaging with it, because I think engaging with the troll's never going to go anywhere.
Great advice.
I've done it myself. I've learned the hard way myself on personal issues where I've done it before on Twitter and got in wars, and it doesn't end anywhere. It doesn't end anywhere positive. It's just not worth it. It brings down your day. So just don't.
Just don't. I think that's a great way to leave it. We're getting to the hour. It's been great. Been great talking to you. But Emily, I'd be remiss of me not to highlight whereabouts people would go to check out your social media, the businesses, where they can get support from you. Because I think just in this last hour, I know I've personally learned a huge amount. You've got a treasure trove of knowledge that businesses will benefit from. So where would they go about finding you?
So our website is nurturestudios.co.uk. Our Instagram is at the Nurture Studios, and those are the core things that we use. But then personal, I'm just at Emily Lysianne.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time, Emily. It's been great chatting with you, and all the best with the business. I think it's incredible.
Thank you. You too with the podcast.